They don't have the votes to convict. We had 45 people, 45 Republican senators say that the whole charade is unconstitutional. So what does that mean? It means that impeachment, the trial, is dead on arrival. There will be a show, there will be a parade of partisanship, but the Democrats really will not be able to win.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rand Paul, with 45 Senate Republicans voting to dismiss Donald Trump's impeachment trial, the New York Times reports it this way tonight, and we quote, "The overwhelming level of Republican support exceeded what almost anyone was expecting. Donald Trump has vanished. He's vanished from sight. He has vanished from Twitter, out of sight, out of mind in all but MAGA nation. Why then does he only seem to live on in the minds and hearts of the sniveling cowards?"
Well, good evening, Brian. Look, let me just start with Rand Paul's comments. And this is somebody who ran talking about his fidelity to the Constitution. His comments are a travesty there. Even in the height of Jim Crow in the South, when there was violence done against Black Americans, occasionally the perpetrators, white people, would be brought before a jury, and a trial would take place. More often than not, in most instances, that trial acquitted those white people, regardless of the preponderance of their guilt. It didn't mean just because you knew in advance that they would be acquitted that there shouldn't be a trial. Because one day there was accountability, there was justice. It's not about winning. It's about justice. It's a trial. We all saw the President of the United States incite a mob of white supremacists, white nationalists, extremist militia, fascist Proud Boys. He incited them to violence. They attacked the Capitol. The Capitol fell. The American flag was torn down. The MAGA flag was raised in its place. The floor of the United States Senate, the floor of the House of Representatives were desecrated. This mob was there to kill the vice president and the Speaker of the House. They didn't succeed, but they killed 5 people, including bludgeoning a police officer to death. There must be accountability for an attack against the people of the United States, an attack against the people's government, the government of the people, by the people, for the people. And so it doesn't matter. We'll see the complicity, the cowardice. We'll see the subordination of their oath of office to the Constitution as they once again assert their loyalty to Donald Trump. And the American people will once again get to take their measure. It is a good thing that Donald Trump has been removed from power, but he leaves behind a real deal autocratic movement in this country. And that movement is sustained in part by the cynicism of the elected elites of the Republican Party, men like Kevin McCarthy and Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, and men like Rand Paul. And this is why you're seeing an action by corporate America that's saying, the 147 members of Congress that rose in an action that would have disenfranchised, nullified, eradicated the voice of millions of Americans on the basis of their skin color. That vote, after the violent insurrection, was a crossing of the Rubicon. And those companies are saying no more donations. And I think in the end, you'll see $100 million to $200 million come out of the political committees that support these members. We're at a time of great turbulence in the politics of the country. As the president tries to deal with this crisis, there must be accountability. There must be justice, not just for the incited who stormed the Capitol and did the violence, but for the inciters, starting with the President of the United States, but also Senators Hawley, Senator Cruz, and former Majority Leader, now Minority Leader McCarthy in the House of Representatives.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.